Hi everyone, this is Kara. Happy holidays and welcome to the second video in my Christmas card series. The Christmas cards that you will see at the end of this video were created using these two particular stamp sets. Both are from Tim Holtz and Stampers Anonymous. It is the mini swirly snowflakes and the swirly snowflakes. As you can see, there's a couple different, actually 3 different sizes. And I have to say these particular stamps are absolutely gorgeous. If you've been thinking about getting them, you've been on the fence or whatever, I highly recommend them. They're beautiful, and of course stamps made by Stampers Anonymous are always good quality, but I just think those particular images are beautiful. So to kind of get back into the swing of card making, I decided to keep the first ones that I make very simple, and what I've done in the past for other occasions is I create kind of a background on a card and then put my sentiment on top in some different ways, which I'll talk to you about a little bit later. So all of the cards that I'm going to be making for this Christmas card series are probably going to be 5.5 by 4.25, just because that's the simplest to kind of mass produce, because I do want to make several when I'm making these cards. I'm hoping they'll all be slightly different, but I do want to kind of make a lot of them when I have all the supplies out. But when I do this and I make the background on the card, I don't like it directly on the card base. I like to do it on another piece of cardstock, and then I adhere it to the card base like this, because I like the frame around that piece of cardstock. I just like the look of it. To me, it looks cleaner and nicer, and so that's kind of what I kept in mind when I was making these cards. So I have a couple different versions of these cards that I'm going to kind of work through with you guys, and I did that because some people aren't going to like doing part of what I do to some of these. You'll see in a minute. I know I'm rambling, but basically I first started with some rustic white cardstock by Paper Tray Ink and some classic white Nina paper, and I inked them up. I used the traditional kind of Tim Holtz tools and some distress ink to get kind of a really pretty look to them. So for this particular one, I used Faded Jeans and Chip Sapphire, and so hopefully you can kind of tell Faded Jeans is more in the center, and then the Chip Sapphire is around the edge, and I just hopefully blended them together pretty well. And then this one is Festive Berries and Age Mahogany. And for some reason my camera is, I think, having a little bit of a hard time picking it up, but hopefully you can kind of see the darker edges, okay? And so once they were all really inked and I liked the way it blended out, I then stamped on it with a couple different inks on each one to kind of lay down that snowflake background. So for example, on this one, you can see I used a blue ink and a black ink. And I did this for a couple reasons. I did the blue because I wanted another blue color in there with the blue background. I just liked the kind of monochrome, is that the right word? Monochrome? Anyway, you guys know what I mean. And then I put the black in there because the black really makes those snowflakes pop, plus it allows me to use a black background if I want to, which we'll talk about here in just a minute. And then on this one, I did a similar thing where I used a red ink and then the black, and hopefully you can also see how really pretty those snowflakes are. Now, if you didn't want to go to the trouble of inking your paper and blending the distress ink and all that jazz, you could pick a color of cardstock that you liked, like this one right here, and just stamp on it in a similar fashion, okay? And you can see that I kind of tried to use all 3 sizes, and again, a blue ink to go with the blue paper and a black, all right? So I liked those, and they were really pretty, and they, you know, on their own, they're great, and they'll provide a nice background to them, but I thought I'd do a kind of a fancier version, so I pulled out my embossing powders. And I created some where I still did the same stamping, but then on one of the layers I embossed. So for example, on this one, it's that same red background here, okay, inked, right? But I embossed with kind of a yellow gold embossing powder. So the embossing powder that I used on this one was Enchanted Gold, okay? And this is a Ranger product, for those of you not familiar. Then I did something similar with this one. Hopefully you can see how pretty the embossing is. And this time I used a liquid platinum. Okay. And then I did a white on here, kind of a white silvery thing in there. And this one I believe was the Snowflake Tinsel, again by Ranger. Then I switched to one of those blue inked backgrounds and had a white snowflake embossed. And this time I used a Wow embossing glitter, is what they're calling it, but it's embossing powder, and it's sparkling snow. And it's super pretty. And then lastly, I did it on just a cardstock background. Okay, in case you didn't, again, want to ink. And this time I used a Zig powder, and this is just a silver. So you can see there's lots and lots of color options. And I wanted to show you both versions because not everybody likes to emboss or has the tools to emboss. I happen to love it. I think embossing on a card is just beautiful, and it makes it look a little bit fancier to me. And I think it just adds a really nice touch to it. So I also want to mention one other thing before I show you kind of how I'm going to put these together. These are somewhat, in my opinion, traditional colors for the holidays. Obviously red and green would be for Christmas. Blues are often used because it's kind of a whole wintry, Christmassy theme. But I just want to kind of remind you guys, you don't have to stick with traditional colors. So I also did a version like this where I did a pink on the white cardstock, and then I did this one where I embossed, again, that fancier kind of version, and that particular one was this Zig embossing powder, and it is just pink, called pink, and it's really pretty, and I think you can do non-traditional colors too. So once I have all of these backgrounds, then the idea is to figure out what card base I'm going to go with, because that'll also help me figure out how I'm going to do my sentiment. Okay, so I have a few set aside. You guys know I pre-made a ton of them, but I just wanted to give you a little idea of how you can use different card bases. So if I wanted to, because I used black in almost all of these, I could always have a black background. And I think that for a lot of these, it would look really, really pretty. I like kind of that black frame. I would just put some white cardstock inside, and that would be totally fine. So I could do something like that with a lot of these. And of course, I think it would look really good with the pinks. Okay, so you can always do that. You can do other non-traditional colors, like a pink background for this one, if I wanted to go that way, which is also really pretty, and I might do that. I also have one that's got a little bit more of a purple to it, that kind of thing. So you can see you can do some non-traditional ones. And then I have some neutral ones that you could try. These are the ones that have kind of a wood grain to them. And then of course, I have some traditional colors. Okay, so I'm gonna get all of these adhered to a card base and then be right back. Okay guys, I am back with the finished cards. I put those snowflake backgrounds on their various card bases and attached a sentiment and put a little bling on some of them. So I thought I would just share with you what the final cards look like. So here is this one. This is one of my favorites. I love the way this embossing powder turned out, and hopefully you can just see how really pretty those snowflakes are. And then here is another one, a little bit more subtle. You can see just a few little rhinestone little bits of bling. Here's this one. And if I'm honest, this is probably my least favorite. I had a really hard time with this color combo. I went way overboard with the bling. It's still pretty, it's just not kind of my favorite one. And then here's this one. This is a little bit of vellum. And then I have, again, another subtle one. Hopefully this red is showing up. In the viewfinder, it looks a little bright, but it's a really pretty shade of red. Here's the one that has that little bit of pink. And then we have some that are in the portrait direction. So here's this one. You can see some more bling down here. This is vellum, and I embossed the sentiment on it. And these sentiments are just from various stamp sets. They're like from some Mama Elephant stamp sets and things like that. Then the last two are maybe my favorite. I didn't add really any extra bling. I did put some little snowflake sequins in there, but it was just so pretty with the embossing powder and just the pattern of the way the snowflakes worked out. Keep it like that. And then of course the last one is all about pink. Hopefully you can kind of see how pretty it all is. Again, I used some vellum with the sentiment on there. And I will say just a couple last things. On vellum, if you're going to stamp, you either need to use an ink that is made for surfaces that are coated, like StazOn, which I don't really like very much, or you need to let the ink dry a little bit or heat emboss it. Not heat emboss it. Heat it to dry it or emboss it. The inks that I actually used on here, I used two different ones when I did not emboss. I used this Gina K ink, which I absolutely love, but I will say it wasn't my most favorite when doing these sentiments because it didn't stay really, really dark. So I also pulled out my VersaFine, which is probably my favorite for sentiments just because it is so black. And let's see if I can find one that shows you the difference. Trying to think. So this one is going to be an example of the VersaFine. And then none of these are really going to give you a good idea, but for example, on the vellum here, which is kind of not a really fair comparison, but it's just not as black and as dark as I would really like. So I went ahead and used both of those. I'm hoping that by seeing all of these, you can get some ideas of your own and see how some simple stamps can make a really great background, give you a lot of variety. Although these all have obviously things in common as far as the stamps that I use and the general techniques, they're all each unique because I use different colors, different card stock and all that good stuff. So I ended up with quite a few cards just from that one batch. I think I ended up with 10. And they're all unique, so I'm pretty pleased with that. And I already am thinking about, of course I have some other ideas, but working with this vellum actually gave me some ideas for a card that I really wasn't planning on doing, but I think I want to play with this vellum a little bit. So I think the next card you're going to see is probably going to have some more vellum in it. So hopefully you enjoyed these. If you have any questions, I know that I didn't show you each and every technique. And if you want to see something specific, if you want like a specific video on like how to emboss or something like that, let me know and I'm happy to do that like after the holidays or something. But I'm assuming a lot of these techniques are already well known, that you guys probably know how to stamp and just the different things that you can do. But if not, let me know. Like I said, I will be happy to go over those things with you guys. And I hope you enjoyed it. And as always, I hope that you are having a great day and a happy holiday season wherever you're at. Bye guys.